why do you think patient involvement has kind of flown under the radar for so long? Why
Mm.
is it not being done universally and kind of why is it taken so long to come to the fore?
I think there's a thing called inertia. I think I started getting involved in the healthcare field in the 1990s. And in the US, that's when we started what we call direct to consumer advertising, these ads on TV where you can love them or you can hate them. But all of a sudden, there was a focus on the patient and the caregiver, not just on the physician. The big pharma companies are experts and had always been experts about going in and listening to physicians and talking to physicians and persuading them to use it. And it was a whole new thing to say, wait a minute, we also have to listen to patients and learn how to persuade them to ask their doctor, if you will, about appropriate treatments. And it's a long slog. I think the heritage is we go to the experts, we go to the doctors, we go to the researchers, and we're kind of getting back to what Mindy said earlier. It's about the science, and we focus on the science, and that's the most important thing. And that is so important, but it's taken a while to say that's not the whole thing. You got to listen to the patient. I recall being at a wonderful conference because it was patients and researchers, and the researchers stood up and said, "We're going to cure you. We're on the way. We're going to do it. There's a lot of things in the work, and we're going to cure you." And a patient stood up and said, "We love you. Thank you. That's great. But what about my cough? Can you help my cough?" And they said, "Well, that's not what's killing you." And said, "I don't want to live if you can't help me with my cough." So yeah, you have to listen beyond the pure science and that again, which I think has been in people's heads for years. I think it just takes a while to change, and we've seen it change. I mean, our whole business has been putting patients together to talk to people, and it's grown and grown. I think they've started to get beyond the lip service, right? To patient centricity. Now we're seeing it happen so much more. I think it's finally getting beyond lip service to for real, you know.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about physicians, we love our physicians. We'd be nowhere without our physicians
Right.
that take such great care of, especially kids with rare diseases. But a physician isn't living the day to day. They are not really functionally aware of what the difference between being able to feed yourself and not really looks like to a family that's doing this on a daily basis. So we value, their input is very valuable, but they can never get to that minutia of what life is like. I think one thing that I assume is that companies think this is going to be expensive, and it's really
Right.
not. I think patient involvement in early trial design is one of the cheapest things that you could probably do for the most. You get the most bang for your buck.
And it
You will
saves
get
money because it
so
prevents
much,
you
so
going the
much
wrong way.
information
Yeah.
from doing a relatively inexpensive exercise. And I do want to point out too that there is an increasing need for patient involvement from a regulator's standpoint. So I think it's very beneficial for companies to track every single patient activity they're doing. So when FDA or one of the other regulators around the globe says, "Did you involve patients in this? What do patients think about this?" You've got a robust um, piece of evidence to show them, yes, we did A, B, C, D, and E. We followed up. We let them know how their contributions mattered. This is all becoming more important, so I think we're coming out of the shadows a little bit on this topic.
Mm. Do you see, Mindy, in that point around the FDA, and apologies if it's not a question for you, but I'm just interested in understanding whether there's going to be any steer from the FDA as to what that patient involvement looks like. Are they going to give any guidelines as to what the minimum criteria will be for that, or do you think it's still very open at this stage?
Well, it remains to be seen. I know there's a lot of workshops scheduled in the coming months with patient expertise being called in.
Mhm.
Um, I think that PFDD and the patient experience, especially when you're thinking about long-term therapies, cell and gene therapies, that patient experience on how patients are doing long-term is going to become critically important. I think payers, we can never in this country we can never forget that payer piece. What are payers going to accept? So these are all things to consider. Um, I think I think the future is bright for uh, patients being included as a major stakeholder in drug development. I don't see any signals that are pointing the other way. I mean, we have had some interesting things happen in the first few months of the new FDA. I think they're learning. There's a rare disease innovation hub that was just recently established that's really calling on all stakeholders to come in and talk about rare drug development, because it's different than chronic drug development, very different, different considerations, different timelines. So lots of things that I'm seeing are calling in that patient voice from a regulator standpoint.
That's great. It's very positive, isn't it? And Mindy, obviously you've had somebody who's had a lot of experience in taking part in studies and clinical trials. Has there been a time or an example where you've really felt unheard in the participation, or you've not enjoyed the participation for one reason or another? And how might that have been different had it been co-designed?
Oh, I could, how long do we have? First of all, my child was reasonably typical as a young kid, and now he is unable to scratch his head. He can still feed himself, but it's borderline. So this level of disability is not taken into account. The expectation that a patient with a great degree of disability can come in and participate in a trial that wasn't designed for him, while the endpoint is directed at him and the trial inclusion is directed at him, but the site doesn't match that. So that's been one thing that I have beaten my head against the wall with sponsors on. You've got to take into consideration the types of patients that are going to be coming in. Another thing, another big one of mine is PROs, questionnaires and surveys. I'm talking your language, Wes, survey. But I'm talking about the PRO instruments that we're expected to fill out in clinic. Let us do those at home. That's another big one. Why are we forced to do these big study surveys in clinic with our kid watching? Very difficult, very upsetting, very emotional. In Duchenne, a lot of times you're documenting decline. So this can be a very difficult thing to have to do in clinic. So start thinking of ways you can alleviate that burden. I feel like this is the way we've always done it. This is how it has to be done. No, everything can evolve and everything can be improved upon. So listen to us when we're saying this is a problem for us. We're having trouble with this. Another thing that I have felt that our patient community has not really been heard about is like biopsies. These are highly burdensome, invasive procedures. We're looking at muscle physiology though, so sometimes a biopsy is needed, but try to keep that minimal. And expecting patients to go in for highly invasive tests and procedures, you've got to listen to what patients are telling you there, because people won't participate if you're asking them to do something that's too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Wes, from your point of view, or maybe both of you actually, what's the kind of the boldest benefit of a patient-led trial design you've seen or could imagine? What have you encountered in your experiences, both of you, that's been a really terrific piece of co-design that's resulted in a really positive outcome?
I'm going to pass that to Mindy because of all the work we do. I'm like the patients. Tell me I don't see what the result is. It's all confidential information that goes to our clients. I wish I had examples.
That's another webinar, Wes, about what we, like let us have our data back and let us know how the trial went and let us know how our participation mattered and where we were in the grand scheme of things. But a couple of things that I have seen, we've had an amazing experience with a clinical trial endpoint with a product that actually went on to be approved. There was a ton of patient involvement and caregiver involvement in selecting a kind of a novel endpoint, an endpoint that now is being used in several of our trials. So our community has had a lot of involvement in endpoint development because it's a progressive disease and you've got this wide range of patients. Endpoints in neuromuscular diseases are probably the most complicated area. So we have been involved in a lot of endpoint development, and we've all learned with our sponsors along the way what works and what doesn't. We developed a multi functional endpoint that we thought was going to be the bee's knees in Duchenne. And then as we got into clinical trials with it, we realized it was still too blunt. The subtle differences in what stability means and how much that can matter, and a small change in the way a patient can move or function. Our instruments are not so sensitive to pick that stuff up. So we work a lot with industry about endpoint development. Another big innovation that in our world was ability to stay on current standard of care while you're participating in a trial. This has been a big improvement in Duchenne space, and it's going to be even more relevant as we move forward into this new era where we have lots of patients on more than one therapy. Patients do not want to stop what they're doing in a progressive neuromuscular disease. If it's working, you don't want to rock the boat. So in order to participate in another trial, allowing some scope to remain on other, not during another trial, but certainly on a approved therapy. And now we have 8 approved therapies in Duchenne. So if you're recruiting for certain subsets of patients, you're going to run across a huge population that is already on something. So you need to take that into consideration. I think that's a pretty big innovation that we've seen.
Absolutely. And I think it like you say, as more and more innovations come to particular fields, it will be essential, or essentially you will run out of viable patients for recruitment if that becomes a real sticking point. So it's great to see that that's starting to be taken into account.
I have one more. Synchronization among regulatory bodies around the world. This is happening in Duchenne. So we've got 8 approved therapies, most of which are only available in the United States. Our companies are having to go abroad to conduct their trials. So we need more synchronization between regulators on what is acceptable, what is not, how trials were run in a consistent way, looking at consistent endpoints, training of endpoint assessments. All that stuff is very important. So we need more harmonization among regulators. And I think we see that happening in rare. I mean, you have to go, if you're looking for enough power to get a good result, you may have to go abroad. So I think that's another big area of innovation, how we're going to make studies more global.
Yeah. And Wes, in terms of that study design, in your view, is co-design about what's decided or how decisions are made? You know, how do you differentiate that? What's the important thing to get right?
I think, again, that comes to the crux of a lot of this too. In the past, people would have said it's about what? It's all about getting the right thing and about the science and such. But I think that's not true. I think, the old saying, do the ends justify the means? And the real answer is no, you have to use the right means. In other words, we have to look at how the decisions are made, and how means, as we've said, including the patients in helping design it. And guess what? Back to what I said before, people help create it, it'll succeed. If it's imposed on them, even if it's scientifically correct, it very well may not succeed because it doesn't have the buy-in of folks. So it gets to, I think that's the big flip here, from here's the answer from on high and it's the right what, to no. Here's the right way of going about doing it, and trust that process will lead to a better result.